Cast out and adrift, Laura Bennett found an unlikely savior in the hushed pronouncement of a Hell's Angel. "You're coming home with me." The diner's fluorescent lights flickered above, accentuating the streaks of tears on her face. She clutched her lightweight Ryan Cole jacket tighter, a futile attempt to shake the bone-deep chill. Outside, the relentless rain mirrored the tempest raging within. 3 days. It had been 3 days since Ethan Walker delivered his devastating blow, his words as frigid as the wedding band he'd tossed onto the kitchen counter. "I need someone who can give me a family," he'd declared, dismissing 8 years of marriage as if they were inconsequential, as if she were inconsequential. Laura stared at her half-eaten burger and fries, her stomach in turmoil. The diner was almost deserted at this late hour, save for a couple of truckers nursing their coffee at the counter. The waitress, who had served her earlier, cast concerned glances her way, undoubtedly wondering why someone would linger in a diner for hours on such a wretched night. A fresh wave of tears threatened to overwhelm her as Laura reached into her purse, anticipating the grim reality. A meager $3 and some loose change far short of covering her meal. She'd spent her remaining cash on gas, hoping to reach her sister's home 2 states away. But her aging Honda had other ideas, sputtering to a halt just outside this anonymous small town. "Before we continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today." "Now, back to the story, Mom." The manager's voice intruded on her thoughts. He was a gaunt man with thinning hair and weary eyes, his name tag identifying him as Frank Doyle. "I'm going to need you to settle your bill." Laura's hands trembled as she looked up at him. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought I had enough." She extended the crumpled bills, coins slipping from her unsteady fingers and scattering across the table. Frank Doyle's expression hardened. "This isn't a charity, ma'am. Either pay the full amount, or I'll have to call the authorities." Shame burned in Laura's chest as she rose, her chair scraping against the linoleum floor. Gathering her few possessions, she braced herself to face the downpour. It couldn't be worse than the storm within her. That's when she heard it, the deep rumble of a motorcycle engine slicing through the rain. The diner door burst open, bringing with it a gust of wet air and the imposing figure of a man who filled the doorway. Laura froze. He stood easily over 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders and arms adorned with intricate tattoos. His leather vest bore the unmistakable patch of the Hell's Angels, and a thick beard concealed the lower portion of his face. But it was his eyes that captivated Laura, deep brown and surprisingly gentle, taking in the scene before him. The biker's gaze shifted from Frank Doyle to Laura, then to the scattered coins on the table. Something flickered in his eyes, understanding perhaps, or recognition of a kindred spirit in need. "How much does she owe?" His voice was deep and gravelly, yet devoid of menace. Frank Doyle straightened up. 27.50. Without hesitation, the biker produced his wallet and placed 2 20s on the counter. "Keep the change." Then he turned to Laura, who remained frozen, clutching her purse like a shield. "You're coming home with me," he stated simply, as if it were the most logical thing in the world. Nobody should be out in weather like this. Laura stepped out into the rain, her shoes splashing in puddles that reflected the diner's neon glow. The downpour instantly saturated her thin Ryan Cole jacket, but the tall biker shielded her from the worst of it with his broad frame. His motorcycle, a massive black machine, awaited them beneath the parking lot's yellow lights. "I'm Ryan Cole," he said, his voice barely audible above the storm. "Most people call me Razor." He reached into a leather saddlebag and retrieved a spare helmet. Laura wrapped her arms around herself, shivering. The patches on his vest caught her eye, Hell's Angels emblazoned in bold letters, along with various other insignias she didn't recognize. Everything she'd ever heard about motorcycle gangs screamed at her to run. But where would she go? Back into the storm with no money and no plan, to the diner where Frank Doyle was likely already dialing the police? She stammered, her voice trembling. I don't even know you." Ryan Cole's expression softened slightly as he held out the helmet. "You don't have to know me to get out of the rain, sweetheart. Sometimes a helping hand is just that, a helping hand." Raindrops streamed down Laura's face, mingling with tears she hoped he wouldn't see. Her fingers closed around the helmet, its solid weight strangely reassuring. Ryan Cole helped her adjust the strap, his calloused hands gentle and precise. "Hold on tight," he instructed as he swung his leg over the bike. The engine roared to life, a deep rumble that vibrated through the pavement. Laura hesitated for a moment before climbing on behind him. The leather of his vest felt slick with rain beneath her fingers. As they pulled out of the parking lot, Laura tightened her grip around Ryan Cole's waist. The wind whipped at her clothes, but his body blocked most of the rain. Streetlights blurred past them, creating golden halos in the darkness. The motorcycle's engine changed pitch as they accelerated, settling into a steady rhythm that seemed to pulse through her entire body. Despite her racing thoughts, Laura found herself relaxing slightly. There was something almost hypnotic about the bike's movement, the way it leaned into curves like a dancer. Ryan Cole handled the massive machine with confident ease, never pushing too fast on the wet roads. Through the visor of her helmet, Laura watched the small town recede. They passed darkened storefronts, quiet neighborhoods, and finally emerged onto open country roads. The rain continued its steady drumming, but the sound of the engine had become oddly comforting, a constant, dependable presence in a world that had recently shown her just how unreliable things could be. She should have been terrified. Everything about this situation defied common sense, climbing onto a motorcycle with a stranger, a hell's angel no less. But something in the gentle way he'd handled the helmet, the careful way he navigated each turn, contradicted his intimidating appearance. Laura closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of Ryan Cole's back against her chest. She couldn't explain the inexplicable sense of safety she felt, even as they sped through the darkness. Maybe it was because she truly had nowhere else to go. Or maybe it was something else entirely, something in the way he'd looked at her with those understanding eyes back in the diner. Whatever it was, for the first time in days, she felt like she could breathe. The motorcycle's engine quieted to a low purr as they turned onto a winding driveway. Tall oak trees lined both sides, their branches forming a natural tunnel even in the darkness. Laura's grip on Ryan Cole's leather vest loosened slightly as they slowed, allowing her to take in her surroundings. The driveway seemed endless, curving through the wooded property until it finally opened up to reveal a sight that made Laura blink in surprise. There, nestled among the trees, stood a magnificent house, not the rough biker compound she'd half expected, but an elegant two-story home with warm lights glowing from within. The colonial-style architecture spoke of wealth and refinement, with its perfect symmetry and gleaming windows. Ryan Cole brought the motorcycle to a stop under a covered parking area near the house. The sudden silence felt heavy after the constant rumble of the engine. Laura's legs were shaky as she dismounted, her muscles stiff from the ride. Ryan Cole steadied her with a gentle hand on her elbow. "Easy there," he said, assisting her with the helmet. "First time on a bike?" Laura nodded, unable to find her voice as she took in the manicured lawn and the stone pathway leading to the front door. Everything about this place seemed surreal, the complete opposite of what she'd imagined when she'd agreed to follow a Hell's Angel home. Raindrops still pattered on the roof above them. But here they were, sheltered. Ryan Cole pulled out a set of keys, the metallic jingle sounding oddly ordinary for such an extraordinary situation. As they approached the front door, Laura noticed the detailed craftsmanship of the woodwork, the brass hardware gleaming even in the dim light. "Welcome to my home," Ryan Cole said, pushing open the heavy wooden door. Laura stepped inside and felt her breath catch. The interior was even more impressive than the exterior. A grand staircase curved up to the second floor, its banister gleaming with polish. Hardwood floors stretched out before her, partially covered by elegant Persian rugs. The walls were adorned with tasteful artwork, and a crystal chandelier cast a warm glow throughout the entrance hall. Her wet shoes squeaked against the floor, making her acutely aware of how out of place she must look, soaked to the bone, her clothes wrinkled and damp. She hugged herself tightly, trying to suppress a shiver. Ryan Cole moved past her with the ease of familiarity, his boots somehow silent on the hardwood. "Living room's this way," he said, gesturing to their right. "Let's get you warmed up." Laura followed him into a spacious room dominated by a stone fireplace. Comfortable-looking leather furniture was arranged to create an intimate seating area, and built-in bookshelves lined one wall. Nothing about this space suggested its owner was a member of a motorcycle gang. "Have a seat," Ryan Cole said, indicating a plush armchair near the fireplace. "I'll make us some tea or coffee if you prefer." Laura sank into the chair, her body finally registering just how exhausted she was. The leather was butter soft against her back, and despite her damp clothes, she felt herself beginning to relax. "Tea would be nice," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Ryan Cole nodded. But before heading to what she assumed was the kitchen, he turned back to her. His expression was serious but kind. "You're safe here for as long as you need." The simple statement, delivered in his deep, gravelly voice, brought unexpected tears to Laura's eyes. She looked down at her hands, overwhelmed by the strange turn her evening had taken. Yet beneath the confusion and uncertainty, she felt something she hadn't anticipated, a tiny spark of hope, fragile but undeniable. Laura sank deeper into the leather sofa, its softness a stark contrast to the hard bench she'd occupied at the diner. The room around her seemed to whisper of wealth and success, from the carefully curated artwork on the walls to the gleaming hardwood floors. A grandfather clock in the corner ticked steadily, marking time in this strange new reality she found herself in. Her damp clothes clung uncomfortably to her skin, and she tried to sit in a way that wouldn't leave water stains on the expensive furniture. The sound of Ryan Cole moving around in another room echoed through the house, and Laura found herself studying the space more closely. Family photos were conspicuously absent from the walls and shelves, replaced instead by landscapes and abstract pieces that revealed little about their owner. A wall of built-in bookshelves caught her attention. They held an impressive collection, everything from leather-bound classics to modern business volumes. This wasn't the library of someone who collected books for show. The spines were worn, suggesting frequent use. Laura spotted titles about investment strategies, property management, and business leadership, nestled among works of literature. Her mind wandered back to Ryan Cole, the contradiction between his appearance and his home growing more puzzling by the minute. The Hell's Angels vest suggested one kind of life, but this elegant house painted a completely different picture. Was this really an act of kindness, or did he make a habit of collecting strays? The thought made her stomach twist uncomfortably. She heard his heavy footsteps returning and straightened up, trying to look less like the desperate woman he'd found outside the diner. Her fingers played nervously with the hem of her wet shirt as she wondered what came next. Would he expect something in return for his help? The thought made her heart race, though something in his manner told her she was safe. Ryan Cole's tall frame filled the doorway as he returned, but it was what he carried that caught Laura's attention. In his hands was a thick stack of papers, professionally bound and organized with colored tabs sticking out from the sides. He moved with the confidence of someone completely at ease in their surroundings, setting the papers down on the coffee table before taking a seat in an armchair across from her. "I run a few businesses," he said matter-of-factly, his voice gentler than his imposing appearance would suggest. He gestured to the papers, which Laura could now see were various financial reports and legal documents. "You don't need to worry about anything, just relax, all right?" There was something disarming about his directness, about the way he seemed to anticipate and address her concerns without making her voice them. Laura felt some of the tension leave her shoulders, her breath coming easier than it had in days. She nodded slightly, accepting his words and the simple kindness behind them. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm, but now its sound felt less imposing. more like a heartbeat giving life to the room. Laura let her hands relax in her lap, no longer fidgeting with her clothes. For the first time since her world had fallen apart, she allowed herself to simply breathe, to exist in this moment without questioning what would come next. Looking at Ryan Cole's earnest expression, she felt the hard shell of distrust she'd built around herself begin to crack. Maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world, even if they came in unexpected packages. The kitchen was warm and inviting, filled with the aroma of a simple but hearty meal. Laura sat at the large wooden table, watching as Ryan Cole moved around the kitchen with surprising grace for such a big man. He'd insisted on cooking, pulling together a quick pasta dish that smelled divine. "Hope you like Italian," he said, setting a steaming plate in front of her. "It's nothing fancy, but it'll fill you up." Laura wrapped her hands around the warm bowl, savoring the comfort it brought. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Ryan Cole settled into his chair across from her, his massive frame making the furniture seem almost small. "No need for thanks. Everyone needs help sometimes." They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Ryan Cole spoke again. "You're probably wondering about all this." He gestured around the room with his fork. "The house, the businesses, the whole setup." Laura nodded, curiosity overcoming her caution. "I have to admit it's not what I expected from a Hell's Angel." Ryan Cole's laugh was deep and genuine. "Yeah, I get that a lot." He took a sip of water, his eyes growing distant with memory. "Started with the club when I was young and angry at the world. Found a family. I had always been present in my own way, yet my aspirations stretched far beyond my current reality." Laura Bennett found herself leaning forward almost imperceptibly, captivated by his narrative. The pasta on her plate was temporarily forgotten as she listened intently. "I began modestly, acquiring a dilapidated garage, renovating it myself, and navigating the complexities of business through trial and error, making virtually every conceivable mistake." His tone conveyed no sense of shame, only straightforward honesty. "But I learned, perpetually learning." That single garage expanded to 2, then 3, eventually branching into real estate and then investments. "All on your own?" Laura Bennett inquired, her curiosity genuine. Ryan Cole nodded, idly twirling pasta around his fork, every penny earned, every lesson etched in the hard way. The angels imparted loyalty and brotherhood, but the intricacies of business? That was self-taught. He offered a wry smile. Once they had finished their meal, Ryan Cole rose, gesturing for Laura Bennett to follow. "Allow me to give you a tour. You should familiarize yourself with the surroundings if you'll be staying here." The house proved even more impressive upon closer inspection. Ryan Cole guided her through each room, his voice a calming constant as he explained the layout. The library instantly became Laura Bennett's sanctuary, with its soaring walls of books and inviting leather chairs nestled in quiet corners. "Feel free to explore any volume that interests you," Ryan Cole remarked, noticing her captivation. "I've spent a considerable amount of time in here myself." They continued on to a welcoming lounge, adorned with plush sofas and a grand fireplace. Everything spoke of comfort and meticulous attention to detail, a stark contrast to the gruff exterior Ryan Cole often projected. The guest rooms were the final stop on the tour, each spacious and impeccably furnished, complete with its own private bathroom. "Select whichever room appeals to you," Ryan Cole offered. "They've all been prepared for a guest." Laura Bennett paused in the doorway of one of the rooms, absorbing the soft bedding and refined decor. The entire evening felt dreamlike, the peaceful dinner, the comprehensive tour, the gentle way this formidable man had opened his home to her. For the first time since her world had been shattered, she experienced something akin to serenity, gazing at the room that could be hers. A fragile sense of hope flickered within Laura Bennett's chest. Perhaps the situation wasn't as dire as it had seemed in the rain outside that diner. Maybe, just maybe, things might eventually be all right. The sheets felt impossibly soft against her skin as she lay in the guest bed, her gaze fixed on the shadows playing across the ceiling. The room was larger than her former master bedroom, boasting a luxurious carpet and elegant furnishings that whispered of understated wealth. Everything about it felt alien, as though she had inadvertently stumbled into someone else's life. Rain continued to fall against the windows, though softer now, creating a gentle rhythm that should have been soothing. Instead, her thoughts spiraled endlessly. The day's events felt like scenes from a movie she could barely accept as reality. Only hours before, she had been huddled outside a diner, drenched and despondent. Now she was reclining in a millionaire's guest room, brought there by a hell's angel possessing kind eyes and gentle words. Laura Bennett shifted onto her side, drawing the down comforter closer. What exactly was Ryan Cole offering her? The question persisted, demanding an answer. He had been unfailingly kind, but life had taught her that kindness often came with hidden stipulations. Her ex-husband's words echoed in her mind. Nothing in this world is free. Laura Bennett. The mattress seemed to cradle her weary body, but her mind remained restless. Was she being naive to accept his help so readily? She had witnessed the opulence of his lifestyle, the unmistakable wealth surrounding him. Men like that didn't simply take in strays without expecting something in return, but what could he possibly want from her? She had nothing of value left to give. Rolling onto her back, Laura Bennett pressed her palms against her eyes. The shame of her circumstances washed over her anew. Here she was, 30 years old and essentially homeless, accepting charity from a complete stranger. Her mother would be mortified. The thought brought a faint, bitter smile to her lips. Her mother had always cautioned her against relying too heavily on others. The house creaked softly, settling into the night. Laura Bennett's eyes darted to the door, suddenly acutely aware of her vulnerability. Ryan Cole seemed trustworthy, but she barely knew him. The lock on the door provided a measure of comfort, but it couldn't halt the parade of what-ifs marching through her mind. Exhaustion began to creep in, blurring the edges of her thoughts. The events of the day, the humiliation at the diner, the motorcycle ride through the rain, the startling revelation of Ryan Cole's wealth, all began to merge. Her eyelids grew heavy, yet sleep remained elusive in the liminal space between waking and dreaming. Fragments of her past resurfaced. The day she had learned she couldn't have children. The look on her husband's face when the doctor confirmed it. The gradual disintegration of everything she had believed to be certain in her life. The betrayal still felt raw, a wound that stubbornly refused to heal. As sleep finally began to claim her, Laura Bennett's last conscious thoughts centered on Ryan Cole's kindness, the gentle way he had spoken to her, the space he had given her to breathe, the absence of judgment in his eyes. A part of her desperately wanted to believe it was genuine, that someone could be kind simply for the sake of kindness. But doubt lingered, whispering caution even as exhaustion overwhelmed her. Her dreams, when they came, were a disorienting blend of past and present. Her ex-husband's accusations intertwined with Ryan Cole's gentle offers of assistance, creating a fragmented narrative that offered no solace. Throughout it all, the central question persisted: what was Ryan Cole really offering her? And what would it ultimately cost? Laura Bennett stirred as warm sunlight filtered across her face. For a moment she experienced a flash of disorientation, expecting to awaken in her old bedroom or perhaps on a friend's sofa. Instead, she found herself enveloped in the softest sheets she had ever encountered, in a room that resembled a luxury hotel suite. The events of the previous night flooded back. The diner, the rain, and Ryan Cole, the imposing yet gentle hell's angel who had brought her to this unexpected sanctuary. Laura Bennett sat up slowly, running her fingers through her tangled hair. The room appeared different in the morning light, less imposing and more inviting. Sunbeams danced across the hardwood floor, creating patterns that seemed to welcome the new day. Her clothes from the previous day lay neatly folded on a nearby chair, She recalled changing into the comfortable pajamas Ryan Cole had provided. They were new, still bearing the tags, prompting her to wonder if he kept them on hand for guests or if he had somehow procured them specifically for her. The silence within the house differed from what she had anticipated. It wasn't the oppressive, lonely silence she had grown accustomed to in recent months, but rather a tranquil quiet that felt almost restorative. Outside her window, birds chirped their morning songs and a light breeze rustled through the trees. Laura Bennett slipped out of bed, her bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. She padded to the window and drew back the curtains, fully taking in the view of the meticulously maintained gardens below. Everything about this place exuded care and attention, a stark contrast to the rugged persona Ryan Cole presented to the world. She caught her reflection in the window and barely recognized herself. The woman staring back at her looked tired but somehow lighter, as if a small portion of her burden had been lifted overnight. The safe harbor Ryan Cole had provided, however temporary it might be, had given her something she had been deprived of for months, a moment to simply breathe. A soft knock at the door startled her. "Come in," she called out, wrapping her arms around herself. The door opened slowly, and Ryan Cole appeared, holding a tray laden with breakfast. The sight of this imposing man, still clad in his leather vest, carefully balancing a delicate china coffee pot and cups, struck her as both amusing and endearing. Steam curled from the coffee pot, and the aroma of fresh pastries filled the air. "Good morning," he said, his deep voice surprisingly gentle. "Thought you might be hungry." He placed the tray on a small table by the window, and Laura Bennett noticed the surprising grace with which he moved for such a large man. "Thank you," she replied, the words feeling woefully inadequate for all he had done. "You didn't have to do this." Ryan Cole straightened and regarded her with those kind eyes that seemed so at odds with his tough exterior. "You can stay as long as you need," he said simply, as if offering his home to strangers was the most commonplace thing in the world. Laura Bennett nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "Thank you," she managed again, softer this time. The gratitude was genuine, even as uncertainty continued to simmer beneath the surface. The morning sun continued to stream through the windows, warming the room and bathing everything in a golden light. In this moment, despite all her lingering doubts and fears, Laura Bennett experienced something she hadn't felt in a long time. A glimmer of hope. The morning routine grew familiar to Laura Bennett over the following days. She would awaken to sunlight streaming through her window, enjoy breakfast in the kitchen, and then find ways to make herself useful around Ryan Cole's sprawling property. Initially, she confined herself to simple tasks, tidying up, organizing papers, anything to keep her hands occupied and her mind from drifting to darker thoughts. Ryan Cole's house was meticulously maintained, but there was always something that required attention. Laura Bennett found herself increasingly drawn to the garden, where vibrant flowers bloomed in carefully arranged beds. She devoted hours to pulling weeds and pruning bushes, finding a sense of tranquility in the repetitive work. The physical exertion helped quiet the incessant chatter in her mind. "You've got quite the green thumb," Ryan Cole remarked one afternoon, appearing beside her as she trimmed back some overgrown roses. His imposing frame cast a shadow over her work, but his presence had become less intimidating with each passing day. "My grandmother taught me," Laura Bennett replied, wiping perspiration from her forehead. "She always said gardens were good for the soul." Ryan Cole nodded, settling himself on a nearby bench. Smart woman. He watched her work for a time, his expression thoughtful. "You know, I started out with nothing but a motorcycle and determination." Laura Bennett paused her pruning, turning to face him. The sun caught the silver in his beard as he spoke, his voice taking on a wistful quality. "Worked every job I could find," he continued. "Construction, security, whatever paid, saved every penny." His weathered hands clenched unconsciously. "First business was a small repair shop. I worked 16-hour days, slept on a cot in the back." Laura Bennett sat on the grass, listening intently. Ryan Cole rarely spoke about his past, and there was something captivating about hearing how this imposing man had built his life from the ground up. Made some good investments, he went on. Property mostly, then more businesses. Things just grew. He gestured towards the grand house behind them. Now I have all this. Sometimes I still can't believe it myself. Laura Bennett surveyed the manicured lawn, the elegant house, the expensive cars in the driveway. Everything spoke of affluence and success, a world so far removed from her own experiences that it seemed almost surreal. She glanced down at her dirt-stained hands and worn clothes, feeling suddenly very small and out of place. "Your story is amazing," she said quietly, attempting to conceal her discomfort. "You've accomplished so much." Ryan Cole must have detected something in her tone because his expression softened. "Everyone needs a helping hand sometimes," he said gently. "I had people who believed in me when I was starting out. Now I can do the same for others." His words, though kind, made Laura Bennett's stomach clench. Was that all she was to him? Another person to assist? Another charitable project? The roses she had been tending suddenly seemed too perfect, too extravagant. She didn't belong in this world of wealth and accomplishment. She was simply lost. She forced a smile, but doubt crept in like shadows at dusk. Ryan Cole had been incredibly generous, but she couldn't shake the persistent feeling that she was just another charity case for this wealthy man who seemed to make a habit of aiding the less fortunate. The afternoon sun continued to warm the garden, but Laura Bennett felt a chill she couldn't quite articulate. She turned back to the roses, needing to occupy her hands while her mind wrestled with uncertainty. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden as Laura Bennett observed Ryan Cole tending to his prized roses, his massive hands, calloused by years of hard labor and adorned with faded tattoos, moved with surprising delicacy among the thorny stems. She couldn't help but notice how someone so intimidating could be so gentle. "You've got to be careful with these ones," Ryan Cole explained, demonstrating the proper angle for pruning. "Cut too close to the bloom and you'll damage next year's growth. Too far and you're not helping the plant at all." Laura Bennett nodded, accepting the pruning shears from him. Her hands trembled slightly as she positioned them on a stem. Ryan Cole stood close behind her, his presence reassuring rather than overwhelming. "That's it," he encouraged as she made the cut. "Nice and steady. You've got good instincts." A warm sensation spread through her chest at his praise. It had been so long since anyone had shown her this kind of patience. Her ex-husband had always been quick to point out her flaws, never her successes. They worked side by side, falling into a comfortable rhythm. Ryan Cole would occasionally point out which branches required attention, but mostly they pruned in companionable silence. The sweet fragrance of roses permeated the air, mingling with the earthy scent of fresh soil. "Let's take a break," Ryan Cole suggested after a while, wiping his brow. "I've got some sandwiches in the kitchen." They settled on the patio where Ryan Cole had arranged a simple lunch. The wooden table between them held plates of generously filled sandwiches and tall glasses of iced tea. Laura Bennett watched as Ryan Cole's large hands carefully arranged everything, still marveling at his contradictions, the tough exterior concealing such thoughtfulness. "Thank you," she said softly, her gratitude encompassing more than just the lunch. The simple domesticity of the moment almost overwhelmed her. Ryan Cole looked up, his eyes kind beneath his furrowed brow. "You don't have to thank me for everything, Laura Bennett." Something in his tone, the genuine warmth, the absence of judgment, caused her carefully constructed walls to crumble a little. She gazed down at her sandwich, searching for the appropriate words. "My husband," she began, then paused to take a deep breath. "He left when we found out I couldn't have children." The words felt like shards of glass in her throat, but she forced them out. "The doctor said it wasn't possible. Something about my body just wasn't made for it." Ryan Cole set down his sandwich, giving her his undivided attention. His face remained neutral, but his eyes held a depth of understanding that compelled her to continue. He said he couldn't handle it. Laura Bennett's voice wavered. Couldn't handle a wife who couldn't give him a family. As if I wasn't enough on my own. She blinked back tears, recalling the day he had packed his bags. As if I had chosen this. Ryan Cole remained silent, but his presence felt like a solid anchor in the tempest of her emotions. He didn't offer empty platitudes or attempt to diminish her feelings. He simply listened, really listened, in a way no one had since her world had been irrevocably shattered. "I thought I'd come to terms with it," she confessed, her voice thick with emotion as she dabbed at her eyes with trembling fingers. "But the reality of it sometimes crashes over me like a wave, the knowledge that I'll never—" The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, the sentence unfinished, the pain evident. Ryan's gaze softened with a deep understanding, and in that instant, Laura felt truly seen, not as a broken woman or a charity case, but as someone whose pain was acknowledged and mattered. The burden she carried seemed to lighten under the warmth of his gentle regard. The distinct rumble of a motorcycle engine, unlike Ryan's familiar bike, shattered the afternoon's tranquility. Startled, Laura looked up from her book as the sound of heavy boots echoed on the front porch steps. Ryan emerged from his office, his typically relaxed demeanor hardening slightly. Without a knock, the front door swung inward, revealing a tall man in military fatigues who strode purposefully into the room. His rigidly short hair and upright posture exuded authority, his eyes sweeping the room with calculated precision before settling on Laura. "Daniel," Ryan greeted his brother, clasping his hand firmly. "Didn't expect you." "Had some business nearby," Daniel replied, his voice clipped and formal. Turning his analytical gaze on Laura, he inquired, "And who is this?" Laura rose to her feet, struggling to keep her hands from trembling. While Ryan's presence had become a source of comfort, Daniel's intensity made her want to shrink away. "I'm Laura Bennett," she managed, forcing a polite smile. "Laura's staying with me for a while," Ryan explained, a subtle warning tone in his voice that Laura hadn't detected before. Daniel's eyebrows rose slightly. "I see." The simple words carried a weight of unspoken judgment. "I'll get dinner started," Ryan announced, breaking the tense atmosphere. "Daniel, you're welcome to join us." Laura followed Ryan into the kitchen, grateful for the opportunity to escape Daniel's scrutinizing gaze. Even as she assisted with the meal preparations, she could feel Daniel's eyes on her from his perch at the kitchen island, his posture unchanging. "So, Laura," Daniel's voice cut through the sounds of the kitchen, "what brings you to my brother's place?" Laura nearly dropped the plate she was holding. She's here because I invited her," Ryan interjected, his voice firm. "That's all you need to know." The dining room felt smaller than usual as they sat down to eat. Laura found herself pushing her food around her plate, her appetite diminished by Daniel's unwavering observation. The military man ate with precise movements, his eyes occasionally darting between her and Ryan. "Ryan mentioned you were married before," Daniel stated abruptly, causing Laura's fork to clatter against her plate. "What happened there?" The room seemed to grow colder. Laura's throat tightened as memories of her ex-husband resurfaced. "It didn't work out," she managed to say. "Heard it was because you couldn't have children," Daniel continued, his tone matter-of-fact. "Must have been quite a blow to your husband's plans." Laura felt as if she had been struck. The familiar shame washed over her, and she stared at her plate, desperately trying to hold back tears. "That's enough," Ryan's voice thundered. He set his fork down with deliberate control, his eyes blazing as he fixed his brother with a glare. "You don't know anything about Laura's situation, and you don't get to judge it. Not in my house." Daniel's expression hardened. "I'm just trying to understand." "No," Ryan retorted. "You're being cruel, and you know it. Laura's my guest, and I won't have you treating her like this." Laura sat frozen, deeply touched by Ryan's defense but mortified that her personal life had become dinner conversation. Tears threatened to spill, and she blinked rapidly to keep them at bay. The weight of Daniel's judgment pressed down on her, leaving her feeling exposed and vulnerable, as if all her carefully concealed wounds had been ripped open for examination. The morning sun streamed through the curtains, casting long shadows across Laura's bedroom floor. She stretched, immediately noticing the quiet that permeated the house, the kind of silence that signaled Ryan was already gone. It was becoming a familiar pattern, waking up to find him already at work, managing his vast network of businesses. Laura swung her legs over the side of the bed, her bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. The house felt different when Ryan wasn't there, somehow larger, more imposing. She wrapped her arms around herself, attempting to shake off an unsettling feeling that had been growing over the past few days. In the kitchen, she found a fresh pot of coffee waiting, still warm. Ryan always thought of those small comforts. A note in his neat handwriting sat beside the coffee maker. "Help yourself to breakfast back this afternoon." "Ah." Laura poured herself a cup and wandered to the living room window. The manicured grounds stretched out before her, perfectly maintained. Everything about this place spoke of wealth and meticulous care, a world apart from the life she had known. She sipped her coffee slowly, her mind drifting to uncomfortable questions. Why was Ryan doing all of this? The coffee, the comfortable bed, the safe haven he had created for her. People didn't simply do things like this without expecting something in return, did they? Her ex-husband's cynical voice echoed in her head. "Nothing comes free in this world, Laura." She moved through the house, lightly touching the expensive artwork on the walls, the leather-bound books in the library, the crystal vases filled with fresh flowers. It all seemed too good to be true. Ryan, with his tough exterior and surprisingly gentle heart, his wealth and his unwavering kindness. What did he ultimately want from her? The thought churned in her stomach. She had witnessed the looks people exchanged when they went into town together, the raised eyebrows, the whispered conversations. Did they assume she was using him for his money? Did he suspect that's what she wanted? Laura found herself standing before the mirror in the hallway, scrutinizing her reflection. She saw what others must see, a woman who had nothing, residing in the home of a wealthy man. The shame of it burned in her chest. She had never asked for any of this, never desired to be dependent on anyone's charity. The hours crawled by as Laura tried to occupy herself with small tasks around the house, organizing the kitchen cabinets, dusting the shelves, anything to keep her mind from spiraling with unanswered questions. But the doubts kept creeping back in, like shadows lengthening as the day wore on. The sound of Ryan's motorcycle finally broke through her troubled thoughts. Late in the afternoon, she heard the garage door open and close, followed by the sound of his heavy boots in the hallway. Laura lingered in the kitchen, pretending to be absorbed in wiping down the already spotless counter for the third time. "Hey," Ryan's warm voice greeted her as he entered the kitchen. He paused, and she could feel his eyes on her. "What's wrong?" Laura kept her focus on the counter, forcing a small smile. "Nothing, just tidying up." She could detect the concern in his voice as he stepped closer. "Laura, really? I'm fine," she insisted, still avoiding his gaze. She didn't want to be a burden, didn't want to add her anxieties to everything else he had taken on by helping her. Ryan didn't press, but when she finally glanced up, she found him watching her with that gentle understanding that made her heart ache. He offered her a reassuring smile, and for a moment, all her doubts seemed foolish in the face of his genuine kindness. Laura stood in the bustling community center kitchen, her hands busy organizing boxes of donated food. The inviting aroma of freshly baked bread and brewing coffee filled the air as volunteers bustled around her, preparing meals for the day's visitors. She checked her list again, ensuring everything was in order, just as Ryan had shown her. "We need more soup containers over here," someone called from across the room. Laura swiftly grabbed a stack from the storage area, her movements now confident and purposeful. Just weeks ago, she would have hesitated, unsure of where anything was. Now, she navigated the space with ease, as if she belonged there. Ryan observed from the doorway, his imposing figure softened by the gentle smile on his face. "You're getting pretty good at this," he remarked, stepping forward to assist her with the heavy boxes. I had a good teacher, Laura replied, feeling a surge of warmth at his praise. She had been surprised when Ryan first mentioned his community outreach programs. The tough-looking biker running soup kitchens and shelter programs was not what she had anticipated, but now it made perfect sense. The morning passed in a blur of activity. Laura assisted in serving meals, engaging in conversations with the visitors, and listening to their stories. An elderly man recounted losing his home after his wife's passing. A young mother shared her struggles to provide for her children on a minimum wage. Each story touched Laura's heart, reminding her that everyone carried their own burdens. Sometimes simply listening makes all the difference, Ryan had told her on her first day. She grasped the truth of that now, witnessing how people's faces brightened when someone took the time to truly hear them. During the lunch rush, Laura worked alongside Ryan, matching his steady pace. They had developed an easy rhythm, navigating the crowded space in perfect sync without exchanging words. She handed him plates while he served the hot meals, their coordinated movements eliciting grateful smiles from those in line. "Thank you, dear," an older woman said, clutching Laura's hand. "It means so much to have someone care." Laura squeezed the woman's hand in return, fighting back tears. She remembered sitting in that diner feeling worthless and completely alone. Now here she was, helping others who felt the same way. The irony was not lost on her. As the afternoon drew to a close, Laura found herself organizing the pantry for the following day. Each can and package she sorted represented a meal for someone in need. The simple act of bringing order to things gave her a sense of accomplishment she hadn't experienced in months. "You know," Ryan said, appearing beside her with more supplies, "we couldn't run this place half as well without you." Laura paused, a can of soup in her hand. "I'm just trying to help," she said softly. "You're doing more than that," Ryan replied. "You're making a real difference here. These people trust you, they open up to you." Looking around the pantry, Laura realized he was right. This wasn't just busy work or a distraction from her own problems. Here, in this unassuming room filled with donated food, she had discovered something she had been missing: purpose. Her inability to have children had left her feeling broken and useless, but helping others and being there for them in their moments of need, this was a different kind of nurturing. She placed the can on the shelf with a newfound reverence. Each item represented hope for someone else, just as Ryan had offered hope to her on that rainy night. She wasn't simply assisting him with his mission, she was finding her own way forward, one small act of kindness at a time. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows through the kitchen windows as Laura and Ryan finished cleaning up after the day's community service. Most of the volunteers had already left, leaving them alone in the comfortable quiet. Laura wiped down the counter while Ryan stored the last of the clean dishes. "You remind me of her sometimes," Ryan said suddenly, his voice soft and distant. Laura looked up, surprised by the unexpected comment. Ryan leaned against the counter, his typically confident posture replaced by something more vulnerable. "Who?" Laura asked gently, setting down her cleaning cloth. Ryan's eyes focused on something far away. "Lena Moore, my first love." He took a deep breath. "She was like you, always wanting to help others, had this way of making everyone feel heard." Laura stood quietly, sensing the weight of what Ryan was about to share. His shoulders hunched slightly, making his large frame seem smaller somehow. "We were young, had our whole lives planned out," he continued, absently tracing patterns on the counter with his finger. "Then, one rainy night, a drunk driver." His voice trailed off, and Laura's heart ached for him. "I'm so sorry, Ryan," she whispered, fighting the urge to reach out and touch his arm. He nodded, clearing his throat. "After that, I threw myself into building the business, joined the Angels, focused on making money. Figured if I kept busy enough, kept everyone at arm's length, it wouldn't hurt anymore." A sad smile played on his lips. "Didn't work out quite like I planned." Laura understood that kind of pain, the kind that compelled you to build walls so high you could barely see over them yourself. She watched as Ryan moved to the window, his reflection superimposed on the darkening sky outside. People saw the success, the tough biker image, he said, made it easier to keep them away. But being alone, he shook his head, that's its own kind of pain. The kitchen felt smaller, somehow more intimate. Laura could see the years of hurt etched in the lines around Ryan's eyes, the careful way he held himself apart. That's why I started all this, he said, gesturing around the community center, thinking maybe helping others would fill the empty spaces. And it helps, but... He turned to look at her directly. Sometimes I wonder if I've forgotten how to let people in. Laura felt the truth of his words resonate deep within her. How many times had she asked herself the same question these past months? After her marriage fell apart, she'd constructed her own walls, convinced she was better off alone than risking more pain. Ryan moved away from the window, his expression softening. Come on, he said, his voice warming. Let me make us dinner. Later, Laura sat across from Ryan at his kitchen table, a simple but lovely meal spread between them. Candles flickered, casting a gentle glow over their faces. The conversation had shifted to lighter topics, but something had undeniably shifted between them. Each smile felt more genuine, each shared glance held more understanding. Laura watched Ryan as he recounted a humorous story about his early days in business. His guard was down now, his laugh more unrestrained. She saw him differently, not as the intimidating biker who had rescued her or the successful businessman who had given her shelter. Instead, she saw someone who understood loss, who knew what it meant to feel broken and keep going. Laura was pruning roses in the front garden when she heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Looking up, her heart skipped a beat. A familiar blue sedan pulled into the driveway, and behind the wheel sat Ethan, her ex-husband. Her fingers tightened around the pruning shears. The car door swung open, and Ethan stepped out, his business suit as impeccable as ever. He looked different somehow, thinner, perhaps, or simply tired. His eyes widened when he saw her. Laura? He seemed genuinely surprised. What are you doing here? She straightened up, willing her hands not to shake. I could ask you the same thing. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she once found endearing but now only made her stomach churn. I'm here to discuss a business deal with Ryan. I had no idea. He trailed off, taking in her casual clothes and the garden tools. Are you living here? That's none of your business anymore, Laura said, her voice steady despite the thundering in her ears. Her chest tightened, a familiar ache. He'd made his position abundantly clear the day he walked out. He took a step toward her, and she recoiled instinctively. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us. Don't. The word was as sharp and brittle as broken glass. Don't you dare. I handled things badly, Laura, Ethan Walker continued, his voice softening in what she knew was a practiced move. I was overwhelmed, confused. Maybe we could talk. Overwhelmed? Laura Bennett's laugh was laced with bitterness. I was the one who couldn't have children. I was the one who needed support. But you? You just packed your bags and left. Ethan Walker's face flushed crimson. It wasn't that simple. It was exactly that simple. Laura Bennett cut him off, her voice gaining strength. You couldn't handle that I wasn't perfect, that I couldn't give you what you wanted, so you ran. The garden suddenly felt suffocating, the air too thick to breathe. Laura Bennett could feel tears threatening to spill, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. I made a mistake, Ethan Walker said quietly, a flicker of regret in his eyes. I miss you. The words she'd once longed to hear now tasted like poison on her tongue. You miss the idea of me, the woman you thought I was supposed to be. Heavy footsteps approached from behind her, a welcome sound. Ryan Cole appeared at her side, his presence solid and reassuring. He didn't say a word, simply stood there, a silent guardian. Ethan Walker's expression shifted, confusion warring with another emotion she recognized. Jealousy, perhaps? I didn't realize you and Ryan Cole were... He trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. Were what? Laura Bennett's voice was glacial. Friends, Unlike you, Ryan Cole actually stood by me when I needed someone. Laura, please, I think you should leave, she said firmly, her gaze unwavering. Whatever business you have with Ryan Cole can wait for another day. Ethan Walker looked from her to Ryan and back again, his shoulders slumping slightly. He nodded, turning toward his car. Before getting in, he paused, a last-ditch effort. I really am sorry, Laura Bennett watched him drive away, her body rigid with tension. She could feel the warmth of Ryan Cole's hand on her shoulder, a steadying presence. The touch anchored her, keeping her from being swept away by a flood of painful memories. They stood there together as the dust settled on the driveway, the silence thick with unspoken emotions. Laura Bennett's heart felt raw and aching from the encounter. The carefully tended roses swayed gently in the breeze, their thorns glinting in the afternoon sun. She'd pricked herself on them countless times while learning to care for them, and she'd grown stronger for it, just like now. The evening settled over the house like a warm blanket, a comforting presence against the lingering chill of the day. Laura Bennett sat curled up on the leather couch, a cup of chamomile tea growing cold in her hands. The encounter with Ethan Walker had left her exhausted, wrung out like an old dish rag. The living room lights were dim, casting soft shadows on the walls. Ryan Cole came in from his office, his footsteps heavy after a long day. Without a word, he sank down next to her on the couch, the leather creaking under his weight. Laura Bennett could feel the warmth radiating from him, solid and real. Rough day, he said. It wasn't a question. Laura Bennett nodded, staring into her tea. The liquid rippled with her slight tremors. Seeing Ethan Walker, she swallowed hard, struggling to find the words. It brought everything back. Ryan Cole remained quiet, giving her the space she needed to continue. That was what she appreciated most about him. He never rushed her, never pushed. You know what the worst part is? Her voice cracked a little. It's not even about him anymore. It's about me. She set the tea down on the coffee table, wrapping her arms around herself as if to hold herself together. Every time I look in the mirror, I see someone who's broken, incomplete. The word hung in the air between them, heavy and suffocating. Laura Bennett's chest felt tight, as if a band was squeezing it. When the doctors first told me I couldn't have children, I thought it was just bad news, you know? Something to deal with, move past. She picked at a loose thread on her sleeve, unable to meet his gaze. But then Ethan Walker left, and suddenly it wasn't just news anymore. It became who I am. Ryan Cole shifted slightly beside her, but remained silent, listening intently. I keep thinking about all the things I'll never experience. First steps, first words, school plays. Her voice wobbled, threatening to break. Mother's Day cards made with glitter and too much glue. And it's not just about missing those things. It's about feeling like I'm not. She struggled to find the words, the weight of her emotions pressing down on her, like I'm not a real woman somehow, like something vital is missing. Tears started rolling down her cheeks, but she couldn't stop now. The words tumbled out like water from a broken dam, a torrent of grief and fear. Everyone says there are other options, other ways to be a mother. But that's not the point. The point is that my body failed me, and now I'm afraid. She took a shaky breath, trying to regain control. I'm afraid that I'll never be enough for anyone, that I'll always be this broken thing that people either pity or abandon. The room felt heavy with her confession, the silence amplifying her vulnerability. Laura Bennett could hear the tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, each second Ethan Walkering her fears. Ryan Cole shifted again, and she felt his calloused hand cover hers. His touch was gentle, almost tentative, so different from his usual confident demeanor. Laura, he said, his voice low and serious, cutting through the noise in her head. You're not broken. You never were. She turned to look at him, searching his eyes for any sign of pity, any hint of falsehood. Really look at him. His eyes held no pity, only a fierce kind of understanding that made her breath catch in her throat. A tiny spark of something, hope maybe, flickered in her chest for the first time in months. The grandfather clock continued its steady rhythm, marking the passage of time, but somehow the weight in Laura Bennett's chest felt a little lighter. Ryan Cole's hand remained on hers, warm and steady, an anchor in the storm of her emotions. The community centre bustled with quiet activity as Laura Bennett walked through its doors. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the paper cup of coffee Ryan Cole had bought her on the drive over. The smell of stale cookies and fresh coffee filled the air, mixing with the murmur of conversation coming from the room down the hall. "You don't have to do this," Ryan Cole said softly beside her, his concern evident. His leather vest creaked as he shifted his weight, his presence a comforting reassurance. Laura Bennett took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. "I know, but I want to." The support group met in a plain room with metal chairs arranged in a circle. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everyone in a harsh, unflattering glow. Laura Bennett chose a seat near the back, grateful when Ryan Cole settled into the chair next to her. His presence felt like a shield, warding off the fear and uncertainty that threatened to overwhelm her. Lena Moore, the group facilitator, welcomed everyone with a warm smile that radiated genuine empathy. She was middle-aged with kind eyes and laugh lines etched around her mouth, a testament to her ability to find joy even in the midst of pain. "We have some new faces today," she said, her voice gentle and inviting. "Would anyone like to start?" Laura Bennett's heart pounded in her chest as others shared their stories, each one a testament to resilience and vulnerability. A woman named Olivia Hart talked about her third miscarriage, her voice thick with grief. Gregory Hill spoke about his wife leaving him after years of failed IVF treatments, his eyes filled with a quiet despair. Each story echoed pieces of Laura Bennett's own pain, validating her own struggles. When her turn came, Laura Bennett's voice quavered with nervousness, threatening to betray her carefully constructed facade. "I'm Laura Bennett," she started, staring down into her coffee cup, avoiding eye contact with the others. "And I can't have children." The words still stung, a sharp reminder of her perceived inadequacy, but somehow they felt less devastating than before. Maybe it was the gentle nods of understanding from around the circle, or the way Ryan Cole's knee pressed reassuringly against hers. A silent message of support. "My husband left me when we found out," she continued, her voice gaining strength as she found her footing. "He said he couldn't handle it, couldn't handle me." Laura Bennett's fingers tightened around her cup, the paper threatening to crumple under the pressure. "For a long time I thought that meant I was broken, that I wasn't enough." A woman across the circle wiped away tears, her face etched with a profound recognition of the pain Laura was describing. "I lost my home, my marriage, my dreams of being a mother." Laura Bennett's voice grew stronger, fueled by a newfound sense of defiance. "But lately, I'm starting to think that maybe that's not the end of my story." The group listened intently as Laura Bennett shared more, her words resonating with honesty and vulnerability. She talked about finding unexpected kindness in unexpected places, about learning to see herself differently, about the slow and arduous process of healing. With each word, something inside her loosened, like a knot slowly coming undone. Other meetings followed, each one a step further on the path to recovery. Week after week, Laura Bennett returned to that circle of chairs, finding solace and strength in the shared experiences of others. She learned names, shared tears, celebrated small victories. Olivia Hart got a puppy, a furry bundle of joy that brought a spark of light back into her life. Gregory Hill started dating again, tentatively venturing back into the world of romance. Life, they all discovered, had a way of continuing, even after the most devastating losses. After one particularly moving session where a longtime member announced her successful adoption, Laura Bennett and Ryan Cole walked to his motorcycle in comfortable silence. The evening air was cool against her skin, carrying the first hints of autumn, a subtle reminder of the changing seasons and the passage of time. Laura Bennett stopped beside the bike, turning to face Ryan Cole. His expression was soft in the fading light, his eyes filled with a quiet warmth. "Thank you," she said quietly, the words carrying the weight of her gratitude. "For what? For bringing me here. For encouraging me to come back." She gestured vaguely at the community center, encompassing the building and the people within. "I never thought talking about it would help, but it does. Hearing other people's stories, sharing mine, it makes me feel less alone." Ryan Cole's eyes crinkled at the corners, a silent smile spreading across his face. "You were never alone, Laura. I know that now." She smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and chased away the shadows that had lingered there for so long. "And I'm starting to think that maybe there's more to life than what I lost. Maybe." She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the crisp autumn air. "Maybe this is just the beginning of something new." The parking lot lights flickered on, casting long shadows across the asphalt, illuminating their figures in the gathering darkness. Laura Bennett felt lighter than she had in months, as if sharing her burden had physically lifted some weight from her shoulders, allowing her to stand taller, to breathe easier, to face the future with a newfound sense of hope. Laura Bennett pushed her shopping cart down the cereal aisle, humming softly to herself, a melody of contentment and gratitude. The fluorescent lights of Marshall's grocery buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the rows of brightly colored boxes. The familiar jingle of the store's music system played in the background, a comforting soundtrack to her mundane task. She reached for a box of granola, her fingers brushing against the familiar cardboard. She was planning to make something special for breakfast tomorrow, a treat to celebrate the small victories she had achieved. The past few weeks at the support group had given her a new sense of peace, a quiet confidence that had been missing for far too long. Even the simple act of grocery shopping felt different now, lighter somehow, imbued with a sense of purpose and gratitude. She smiled, thinking about how Ryan Cole had started requesting specific snacks for their evening talks, his playful requests a testament to the growing bond between them. Laura Bennett. The voice made her freeze, her blood running cold. Her hand, still stretched toward the shelf, began to tremble, the familiar feeling of anxiety creeping back into her chest. She knew that voice, had heard it whisper promises of love and devotion, had heard it utter words of rejection and abandonment with equal conviction. Ethan Walker stood at the end of the aisle, looking exactly as she remembered, a ghost from her past come back to haunt her. His blue dress shirt was perfectly pressed, his hair neatly styled, his appearance a carefully constructed facade of success and respectability. His wedding ring, a new wedding ring, she noticed with a jolt, catching the harsh store lighting and flashing like a warning signal. "I thought that was you," he said, his voice smooth and practiced, a deceptive charm radiating from him. He took a step closer, invading her personal space and igniting a spark of anger within her. Laura Bennett's throat felt tight, constricted by a mixture of fear and resentment. "Ethan," she managed a small nod, a feeble attempt to acknowledge his presence, desperately wishing she could disappear between the boxes of cereal and granola bars, escaping the encounter altogether. "You look..." He paused, his eyes traveling over her face, assessing her, judging her, different. Laura Bennett's fingers gripped the shopping cart handle tighter, her knuckles turning white. "It's been 6 months, right?" He shifted uncomfortably, his facade of confidence beginning to crumble under the weight of her unwavering gaze. "I heard you're staying with someone, some biker." The way he said it, dripping with disdain and judgment, made her skin crawl. It was as if Ryan Cole was something dirty, something beneath them, a stain on her reputation. "His name is Ryan Cole," she said, lifting her chin slightly, asserting her own agency. "He's been very kind to me." Ethan Walker's face twisted into something ugly, a mask of jealousy and resentment. "Kind? Is that what you're calling it? First you can't give me children, and now you're living with some hell's angel." The words hit her like physical blows, each syllable a carefully aimed weapon designed to inflict maximum damage. Laura Bennett felt the familiar shame rising in her chest, threatening to choke her, to silence her, to consume her whole. "You really have fallen, haven't you?" Ethan Walker continued, his voice dripping with contempt, his eyes filled with a cruel satisfaction. I guess when you're damaged goods, you can't be picky about who takes you in. Laura Bennett's vision blurred with tears, the bright lights of the store swirling around her. The store suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too everything. She abandoned her cart, the groceries tumbling to the floor, a symbolic representation of her own shattered dreams. She turned away from Ethan Walker's cruel smile, desperate to escape his presence. That's right. Run away, he called after her, his voice laced with mockery. It's what you're good at. She fumbled with her phone as she burst through the store's automatic doors, the tears blurring her vision, making it difficult to see the screen. Ryan Cole answered on the first ring, his voice a beacon of hope in the darkness that threatened to engulf her. Laura, what's wrong? Can you... She tried to steady her voice, fighting back the sobs that threatened to overwhelm her. Can you come get me, please? I'm on my way. His voice was firm, reassuring, a promise of safety and protection. She huddled on a bench outside the store, wrapping her arms around herself as if she could physically hold together the pieces that felt like they were falling apart. The cool air did little to quell the fire of shame and humiliation that burned within her. The rumble of Ryan Cole's motorcycle came just minutes later, a welcome sound that cut through the noise of her fear. He took one look at her face, at the tears streaming down her cheeks, at the raw pain in her eyes, and his expression darkened, hardening into a mask of protective fury. What happened? Ethan Walker, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He was here. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, tracing paths through the remnants of her makeup. Ryan Cole's jaw clenched, his hands tightening on the handlebars of his motorcycle. Don't let him get to you, he said, his voice firm but gentler than she'd ever heard it. Whatever he said, it's not true. But Laura Bennett could still hear Ethan Walker's words echoing in her head, each syllable a poisoned dart aimed at her heart. Damaged goods, fallen. The truth of her inability to have children felt like an open wound again, raw and bleeding, threatening to consume her with despair. Ryan Cole helped her onto his motorcycle, his strong hands steady and sure, guiding her with a tenderness that belied his tough exterior. But even his solid presence, his unwavering support, couldn't completely chase away the doubts and insecurities that Ethan Walker had stirred up, the demons that had haunted her for so long. She pressed her face against Ryan Cole's leather vest, letting the tears fall silently, a cathartic release of the pain and anger that had been building inside her. They rode away from the store, leaving behind the harsh lights and the cruel words, but the echoes of the past continued to reverberate within her. The kitchen was quiet, except for the soft clink of dishes as Laura Bennett methodically washed them, letting the warm water run over her hands, a futile attempt to cleanse herself of Thiwu Hui that she felt had clung to her. She'd been at it for nearly an hour, cleaning things that were already spotless, scrubbing and polishing with a frantic energy, trying to keep her mind occupied, trying to silence the voices in her head. Ryan Cole sat at the kitchen island, his presence impossible to ignore, a silent observer of her distress. He hadn't said much since they got back from the store, but his eyes followed her every movement, his gaze filled with a mixture of concern and understanding. The silence stretched between them like a rubber band, taut and strained, ready to snap at any moment. You going to tell me what he said to you? Ryan Cole's voice was gentle but firm, a gentle nudge towards the truth. Laura Bennett scrubbed harder at an already spotless plate, her movements becoming more frantic. It doesn't matter. Clearly it does. He arched an eyebrow, his expression conveying a silent challenge. She shook her head, focusing on the soap bubbles in the sink, mesmerized by their iridescent sheen. Her hands were pruned from the water, but she couldn't bring herself to stop, couldn't break the cycle of cleaning and scrubbing that provided a temporary distraction from her pain. If she stopped, she'd have to think about Ethan Walker's words, about how right he was, about the truth that she had tried so hard to deny. Laura, Ryan Cole's chair scraped against the floor as he stood up, his movements deliberate and purposeful. "Look at me." She kept her eyes down, her shoulders tense, her body coiled tight like a spring ready to unleash. "I should probably go," she said quietly, the words feeling heavy in her mouth, like lead weights dragging her down. "I've imposed on you long enough." "Imposed?" Ryan Cole's voice held a note of disbelief, a hint of hurt. "Is that what you think you've been doing?" Laura Bennett finally turned off the water, her hands gripping the edge of the sink for support, her knuckles white. She swallowed hard, struggling to find the words to express the complex emotions that were swirling within her. "I'm just taking advantage of your kindness, living here, letting you take care of me. It's not fair to you." "Fair to me?" Ryan Cole moved closer, his presence filling the small space between them. He stopped when he saw her tense up, her body language radiating vulnerability and fear. "You think I don't want you here? Why would you?" The words burst out before she could stop them, a desperate plea for understanding. "I'm just some broken woman you found outside a diner. I can't even—" Her voice cracked, her throat closing up with emotion. "I can't even have children. What kind of woman does that make me?" Ryan Cole's silence, instead of offering comfort, made her continue, the words tumbling out like water from a broken dam, a torrent of self-deprecation and despair. Ethan Walker was right. "I'm damaged goods. I don't belong here, in this beautiful house, with someone like you who has everything together. I should just go before—" "Stop." Ryan Cole's voice was quiet but commanding, cutting through her tirade of self-loathing. "Just stop." Laura Bennett finally looked up at him, her vision blurry with unshed tears. His face was a mix of anger and something else she couldn't quite read, a complex tapestry of emotions that both intrigued and intimidated her. "You don't need to leave, Laura." His words were soft but intense, resonating with a depth of feeling that surprised her. "You're not broken." She tried to turn away, unable to face the intensity of his gaze, but Ryan Cole stepped closer, his presence filling her space, his touch gentle but firm. "Listen to me." His voice was low and insistent, demanding her attention. "Whatever that a hole said to you today, whatever he made you believe about yourself, it's all—" Laura wrapped her arms tightly around herself, as if trying to physically contain the turmoil within. "You just don't understand," she choked out. Ryan's voice softened, laced with empathy. "I understand more than you think. I understand that you possess a strength you haven't fully recognized. I understand that your worth as a woman isn't diminished by not being able to have children, and I understand that you're welcome here for as long as you need to be." His words resonated deep within her, yet the fortress she had constructed around her heart remained stubbornly intact. She'd heard similar sentiments before, kind reassurances from her ex-husband, supportive words from friends and family. But they had all eventually grown weary, their encouragement fading. Why would Ryan Cole be any different? Her gaze remained fixed on the floor, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, torn between a desperate desire to believe him and a paralyzing fear of vulnerability. As evening descended, Ryan's house seemed to embrace them like a heavy blanket. Laura stood transfixed by the expansive living room window, watching the sun's final rays transform the sky into a breathtaking canvas of deep purples and vibrant oranges. Her own reflection stared back at her, a pale and uncertain ghost. Behind her, the gentle clinking of Ryan preparing tea in the kitchen provided a soothing counterpoint to the storm raging within her mind. The day's events played on repeat in her thoughts. Ethan Walker's cruel barbs, Ryan's unexpected kindness, the relentless push and pull between staying and fleeing. When Ryan appeared, offering 2 steaming mugs, she accepted hers with trembling hands, the warmth seeping into her fingers, grounding her in the present moment. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for the tea." Ryan settled into his familiar armchair, his imposing frame somehow softened by the evening's gentle light. "Care to tell me what's really going on in that head of yours?" he asked gently. Laura took a shaky breath, the words she'd suppressed all day pressing against her chest, demanding release. "I feel broken," she confessed, her voice cracking on the final word. "It's not just because I can't have children, it's more than that." Ryan remained silent, creating a space for her to continue, his unwavering presence a quiet encouragement. "Every time I look in the mirror," she continued, "I see someone who has failed. Failed at being a wife, failed at being a woman." She wrapped her arms around herself protectively. "Ethan used to say that having children was the most natural thing in the world, and I couldn't even do that right." "Laura," Ryan began, but she raised a hand, silencing him. "Please, let me finish." She inhaled deeply. "The worst part isn't even the infertility itself, it's the shame. The constant fear that no one will ever truly love me because I'm incomplete, damaged." Her voice dropped to a mere whisper, unlovable. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken emotions. Laura could feel Ryan's gaze upon her, but she couldn't bring herself to meet his eyes. "Can I tell you something?" he asked, his voice unusually tender. He placed his mug on the side table and leaned forward in his chair. "You're not the only one who's scared." That made Laura look up, her eyes widening slightly. Ryan's face reflected a vulnerability she'd never witnessed before. "After Lena died, my first love," he explained, "I built walls so high, I was convinced no one would ever be able to scale them." He ran a hand through his beard, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of discomfort. Being tough, building businesses, chasing success, it was all easier than letting anyone get close enough to hurt me again. Laura watched as he wrestled with his next words. This seemingly invincible man was sharing his deepest fears with her. "The truth is," he confessed, "I'm terrified of opening up, of being vulnerable, of letting someone see past all this." He gestured to his tattooed arms and leather vest. "Because the last time I did, you lost everything," Laura finished softly. Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, something shifted between them. The carefully constructed walls, the defenses they had both maintained for so long, began to show hairline cracks. "We're quite a pair, aren't we?" Ryan said, a hint of wry humor in his voice, though his eyes remained serious. "Both so scared of being hurt that we forget how to let people in." Laura felt tears tracing paths down her cheeks. But for the first time in a long while, they weren't tears of shame or despair. They were tears of recognition, of finding someone who understood. The morning sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Ryan appeared at Laura's door. "Get your boots on," he said softly. "I want to show you something." She followed him through the dewy grass, their footsteps leaving dark imprints in the morning frost. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the gentle melodies of birds welcoming the new day. Ryan led her down a winding path she hadn't noticed before, through a dense cluster of tall pines that opened up to reveal a scene that stole her breath away. A small, serene lake stretched before them, its surface like polished glass reflecting the early morning light. Wisps of mist rose from the water, dancing in the golden rays of sunrise. The shoreline was adorned with smooth stones and weathered logs, a natural sanctuary. Ryan gestured towards one of the larger logs. "I come here sometimes when things get too loud in my head." Laura settled onto the log, wrapping her arms around herself against the morning chill. Ryan sat beside her, his presence a comforting anchor. For a while, they simply watched the mist swirl across the water's surface, listening to the gentle lapping of tiny waves against the shore. "It's beautiful," she whispered, hesitant to break the peaceful silence. "My father used to bring me here," Ryan said, his voice matching her quiet tone. "He'd tell me that water doesn't judge. It just is. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, successful or struggling. The reflection you see is just you." Laura looked down at their reflections mirrored in the still water. The morning light softened their features, giving them an almost ethereal glow. She saw herself small beside Ryan's larger frame, yet somehow not diminished by the comparison. "I've spent so much time trying to be what others wanted," she confessed, her voice barely audible. "A perfect wife, a mother. When all those things fell apart, I felt like I had nothing left. A fish jumped somewhere in the distance, sending ripples across their reflections. Ryan remained silent, giving her the space to continue. But sitting here, Laura gestured to the tranquil scene around them. Nature doesn't care if I can have children or not. The sun still rises, the birds still sing, the water still flows. Maybe... She paused, struggling to articulate her evolving feelings. Maybe I've been measuring my worth by the wrong things. Ryan shifted slightly beside her, and she felt his warm hand cover hers where it rested on the log. The touch was gentle, almost tentative, yet it grounded her in the moment. "You know what I see when I look at you?" he asked, his voice thick with emotion. "I see someone who gets up every morning and faces the day, even when it hurts. Someone who helps others at the shelter while carrying her own pain. Someone who has more strength than she even realizes." Laura felt tears welling up in her eyes, but these felt different from the tears she'd shed before. These felt cleansing, like the morning dew surrounding them. Ryan turned to face her fully, his eyes reflecting the golden light of sunrise, his hand tightening slightly over hers as he spoke. "You're enough, Laura Bennett, just as you are." The words settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time since her world had crumbled, Laura felt them resonate with truth in her heart. She looked out over the peaceful lake, its surface now painted with the vibrant colors of dawn, and finally she began to believe it. The morning after their visit to the lake, Laura walked through the doors of the community center with newfound confidence. The familiar aroma of coffee and freshly baked bread filled the air as volunteers prepared for another day of serving those in need. But something felt different today. She felt different. She spotted Lena, one of the regular volunteers, and called out, "We could really use your help sorting through these donated clothes." Laura smiled as she made her way over. Her hands moved with purpose through the piles of garments, sorting them by size and season. As she worked, she observed the steady flow of people entering the center, each carrying their own unique story, their own personal struggles. A young mother caught her attention, struggling to manage 3 small children while trying to select food items. Without hesitation, Laura approached her. "Would you like some help?" she asked, kneeling down to be at eye level with the youngest child who was starting to fuss. The mother's relief was immediate. "Oh, would you? It's been a rough morning. I understand rough mornings," Laura said softly, gently taking the squirming toddler's hand. She began entertaining the child with silly faces, and the little one's giggles echoed through the center, drawing smiles from those nearby. As she assisted the family, Laura felt a profound shift within her. Here was a mother striving to do her best, and here was Laura, able to offer support, to make a positive impact, not because she could bear children herself, but because she possessed compassion, patience, and understanding to share. Throughout the morning, Laura found herself moving from one task to another with renewed energy. She helped an elderly man locate a warm coat, listened attentively to a teenager's anxieties about school, and organized the food pantry, ensuring careful attention to expiration dates. Each interaction, each small act of kindness felt like a stitch, mending something within her that had been torn. During the lunch rush, she worked alongside the other volunteers, serving hot meals with a warmth that went beyond the steam rising from the plates. She noticed details she might have previously overlooked, how one regular visitor always saved half his bread for later, how another preferred her coffee extra hot due to her long walk home. "You seem different today," remarked Tom, an older volunteer who had been running the kitchen for years, as he stirred a massive pot of soup. "There's a light about you." Laura paused, ladle suspended in mid-air over a bowl. "I feel different," she admitted, "like I'm finally seeing things clearly." A woman approached the serving line, her eyes downcast, her shoulders hunched, a posture Laura recognized all too well. As she served her, Laura made a point of meeting her gaze, offering a genuine smile and asking her name. The woman, Isabella Cruz, straightened slightly at the personal connection. "Would you like to sit with me while you eat?" Laura offered, noticing Isabella's hesitation to join the crowded tables. As they sat together, Isabella slowly began to open up, sharing her recent job loss and the feelings of failure it had triggered. Laura listened intently, truly listening, recognizing the shame and self-doubt reflected in Isabella's words. She shared snippets of her own story, not as someone who held all the answers, but as someone who understood the journey. "You're not alone," Laura told her, lightly touching Isabella's hand. "And this moment doesn't define you." The words flowed naturally now, words she wished someone had spoken to her months ago. As she spoke them, Laura realized she wasn't only helping Isabella, she was also healing herself, one act of kindness at a time. The sun had begun its descent behind the trees, casting long shadows across Ryan's property. Laura sat on the back porch, watching the sky transform into a breathtaking tapestry of orange and pink hues. The evening air was cool against her skin, carrying the sweet fragrance of blooming jasmine from the garden. The sound of Ryan's heavy boots announced his presence before she saw him. He emerged from inside, carrying 2 steaming mugs. Laura noticed a slight tremor in his usually steady movements as he handed her one. "Thanks," she said softly, wrapping her fingers around the warm ceramic. Ryan settled into the chair beside her, his large frame making the chair appear smaller than it was. The silence between them felt different tonight, charged with unspoken emotions. Laura could sense his tension, a stark contrast to his usual calm demeanor. "Laura," he began, his voice rougher than usual. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Laura, I need to tell you something." She turned to face him, struck by the vulnerability in his eyes. This was Ryan Razor Malone, the man who commanded respect wherever he went. Yet here he sat, looking almost nervous. "These past few months," he continued, his fingers tightening around his mug, "watching you grow stronger, seeing you rebuild yourself, it's been incredible." Laura's heart began to race. She watched as he set his mug down and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped together. "I never expected this," he said, his voice low and earnest. "When I brought you here that night, I just wanted to help, but something happened along the way." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I fell in love with you, Laura." The words hung in the air between them. Laura's breath caught in her throat as Ryan continued. "It's not just your vulnerability, though that touched my heart from the start. It's your strength, your resilience, the way you care for others at the center, how you face every challenge head on." His eyes met hers, intense and sincere. "The way you make me want to be better, to open up again." Laura's hands trembled around her mug. She set it down carefully, afraid she might drop it. "I love how you see the best in people, even after everything you've been through," he continued, his voice growing softer. "I love your compassion, your determination, the way you smile when you're helping others, like you've found your purpose again." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to, and gently took her hand in his. His calloused fingers felt surprisingly tender against her skin. "I know this might complicate things," he said, "and if you don't feel the same way, I understand. Nothing has to change. You'll always have a home here, regardless." Laura looked down at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his touch, the steadiness of his presence. Everything he had just said resonated with the emotions she had been struggling to understand herself. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "I think I've fallen in love with you too." The words felt foreign on her tongue, yet undeniably true. She squeezed his hand, gathering her courage. "I never thought I could feel this way again, but you made me believe in myself again, in love again." The kitchen was bathed in warm light, filled with the comforting aroma of home-cooked food. Laura stood at the counter, chopping vegetables, while Ryan tended to something simmering on the stove. The atmosphere felt different now, charged with possibility rather than uncertainty. "I haven't cooked for anyone special in years," Ryan admitted, stirring the pot of pasta sauce. His leather vest hung on a chair, replaced by a simple black t-shirt that showcased his tattooed arms. Laura smiled, sliding the chopped vegetables into a bowl. I guess we're both a little rusty at this. Ryan reached past her for the salt, his presence solid and warm behind her. Maybe, he said softly. But some things just feel right, don't they? They worked together in comfortable silence, moving around each other with an easy familiarity. They moved around each other in the kitchen with a familiarity that suggested years of shared meals and quiet mornings. Laura set the small table in the breakfast nook, her movements efficient and graceful, while Ryan put the finishing touches on the sauce, its aroma filling the air. 2 plates, 2 glasses, and a bottle of wine sat on the table, promising a simple yet intimate evening. This looks amazing, Laura said as Ryan served the pasta, the rich tomato sauce sending fragrant steam into the air. She watched as he settled into the chair across from her, still marveling at how a man of his size could possess such tenderness. Ryan poured them each a glass of wine. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass in a toast. To new beginnings, Laura echoed, touching her glass to his, the crystal singing a clear, sweet note. As they ate, their conversation flowed effortlessly, exploring hopes and dreams they'd once held too close to voice. The future, once a source of anxiety, now shimmered with possibility. I've been thinking, Ryan said, setting down his fork, his expression serious. The community center desperately needs someone to oversee the daily operations, someone with a deep understanding of what it means to need help and the grace to offer it with dignity. Laura's heart skipped a beat, a hopeful flutter in her chest. Are you offering me a job? If you want it, he replied, his eyes holding hers. I've seen how you connect with people there, how much they trust you. She reached across the table and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. I'd love that. It would mean so much to be able to help others the way you helped me. Ryan's thumb traced gentle circles on her palm, a silent reassurance. You did the hard work yourself, Laura. I just provided a safe space for you to start healing. You provided more than that, she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. You showed me I wasn't broken, that I still had value. Ryan stood and rounded the table, gently pulling Laura to her feet. His arms encircled her, strong and secure. She leaned into his embrace, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart against her cheek. You're home now, he whispered into her hair, his voice a low rumble against her ear. Not just in this house. You have a place here. He placed a hand over his heart, his touch warm and grounding. Right here. Laura closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his words wash over her, finding solace in his arms. She finally felt what she'd been searching for all along, not just shelter from the storm, but a sense of belonging, not just safety, but love. The autumn breeze whispered through the trees surrounding Ryan's property, now their shared home. Laura stood by the window of her office at the community center, watching volunteers unload boxes of donations, their movements a flurry of activity. 6 months had passed since that stormy night, when Ryan had found her at the diner, and her life had been irrevocably transformed in ways she never imagined possible. She smiled as she spotted Ryan directing the volunteers, his imposing figure softened by the sunlight glinting off his leather vest. Despite his intimidating appearance, the local kids adored him, often running up to give him high fives or show him their latest drawings. Today was no different. A small group of children had gathered around him, eager to help with the donations, their faces alight with enthusiasm. Laura's desk was covered with thank you notes from families they'd helped, each card a testament to their shared journey. Each card represented a story of hope, a potent reminder that even the deepest pain could be alchemized into purpose. She picked up one decorated with crayon hearts, remembering the single mother who'd written it after they'd helped her find stable housing and a steady job. Miss Laura, a familiar voice called from the doorway. It was Lena Moore, one of their most dedicated volunteers. The new family just arrived. They seemed pretty scared. Laura nodded, her heart going out to them. She understood completely. She'd been in their shoes not so long ago. I'll be right there. In the main hall, she found a woman and her teenage son, their entire lives packed into 2 worn suitcases. The woman's eyes held that same lost and haunted look that Laura had carried for so long. "I'm Laura," she said softly, extending her hand in a gesture of welcome. "Welcome to your temporary home." As Laura showed them around, patiently explaining their programs and services, she caught glimpses of Ryan through the windows, still working alongside the volunteers, his presence a calming force. He'd catch her eye occasionally, offering her that special knowing smile that never failed to warm her heart. Later that afternoon, they strolled through their ever-expanding community garden, where residents cultivated their own vegetables, tending to the earth and nurturing new life. What had begun as a small patch had blossomed into a thriving oasis, a place where people could heal through the simple act of creation. Laura paused to adjust a tomato plant's support stake, remembering how therapeutic gardening had been during her own journey of recovery. "Remember when you first came here?" Ryan asked, his voice gentle. "You wouldn't even look me in the eye." Laura laughed softly, the sound light and free. "I was terrified, this big, scary biker offering me shelter. I thought I was crazy to accept. And now look at you," he said proudly, his gaze filled with admiration, "running this place better than I ever could." They reached the center of the garden, where benches surrounded a small fountain, creating a peaceful gathering spot for their community members. Laura watched as the new teenage boy they'd welcomed earlier sat reading, his posture already more relaxed than when he'd first arrived. "It's amazing," Laura mused, a sense of wonder filling her voice. "How life has a way of turning pain into purpose." Ryan wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close, his touch a comforting weight. "You did that, sweetheart. You took your hurt and transformed it into something beautiful." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garden as their community members went about their daily routines. Some tended to the vegetables, their hands calloused but gentle. Others sat chatting on the benches, sharing stories and laughter, while children played nearby, their voices echoing through the air. The scene before them was alive with hope and healing, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Laura leaned into Ryan's embrace, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, a rhythm she'd come to rely on. Together, they'd created something neither of them had expected. A sanctuary where broken spirits could mend, where second chances were not just a possibility but a reality, and where love grew as naturally as the flowers in their garden. And as this chapter quietly comes to rest, we're reminded that sometimes the most powerful turning points in life arrive without warning, in moments of loss, kindness, and unexpected courage. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it moved you, inspired you, or made you reflect in any way, please consider subscribing to Heart Tales so you never miss the next journey we share together. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What moments stayed with you the most? Or what would you have done in her place? Share your feelings in the comments below. Your voice matters here. And when you're ready, continue watching the stories waiting for you on the end screen. Thank you for being part of the Heart Tales family.